Okay, this is the last of the lectures on this Module 2, the basic Java. And what we'll do is talk about how you can actually begin to use objects. For your first programming assignment, this is not required. For the second one, we provide the objects for you, and then after that, you'll be creating your own objects. Okay, so the files we're going to look at are circle object. So now it's still just a circle, but now I've built it as an object. The previous version, circle with input, first circle, these weren't really built as objects. They don't have any attributes. The only methods they have is main. All the work is done inside main. That's not how you build an object. So let's take a look at what an object really does look like. Again, I have the initial comment block. I screwed up here. I don't have attributes and methods listed in the comment block. That's something you need to do. And now look, I've got, okay, so what do we have? First of all, attributes for the first time. Notice that these are outside of any method. They are attributes, and because they're attributes, I put the visibility modifier in front of them. I made them private. Make your attributes private. After that, methods. Now this is the amount of commenting that I tend to put in my code, is I just kind of delineate the major sections. So attributes, and then I say, okay, here's a visual barrier to let me know I'm starting my methods. I kept main. It doesn't do anything. You don't need to have main. You'll see that we don't even use main when we run the program. And the reason I don't need main is because I'll have another class, this circle controller class, that has main in it, creates the circle object, and executes the circle object, or exercises the circle object. I do have a couple of methods that deal with the circle calculations. So calculate area, calculate perimeter. Based on their name, guess what they do, right? You should name your methods based on what they do. People should have a really good guess as to what they do based on the name. These are public methods, so now my external object, the circle controller, my external object has access to these methods and can call them, and basically the external object can say, hey circle, what's your area? And then the circle will calculate its area and return that value as a double. And that's what this is saying. Return radius times math.pi, that's the area. Hey circle, what's your perimeter? Call that method, it will return a double, 2 times radius times math.pi. This is a fairly normal way to do it. Notice these methods are small, they do a small specific job. Because we have attributes, we're going to introduce a new kind of method here. And these methods are called setters and getters. Basically, for every attribute, you should have the ability for an external entity to set that value and for an external entity to get that value. So for every attribute, I have set, get, and set, get, and set. The actual real name for these things are accessors and mutators, but everybody calls them setters and getters. Getters are accessors, they access the data. Sets are mutators, they mutate or change the data, right? When you set the value, you're setting the new value. When I'm setting the new value, I have to tell the object what new value I want, so that's what's going on here. The input parameter list does require a value. Did I keep those as integers? Why would I do that? Yeah, they're still integers. Okay, so we're setting those as integers. So I have sets and gets for all of these. Now, if you have a whole bunch of attributes, that can be rather tedious to create all these, but Eclipse has a wizard where once you set up all your attributes, you click on the wizard and you just say, click, 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 give me setters and getters for all these. And it will automatically create them. It is one of those time-saving things that Eclipse does. Now, how does this thing work? Well, this is the circle class. It's the design. And I'm going to create another class that actually builds circles and then does stuff to circles. No, we can't do much with these circles. It's going to build a circle, set the x location, set the y location, set the radius, and then ask for the areas and perimeters. So, public class circle controller. And this is the one that has main in it. Now, I had a trivial main inside the circle object. It really didn't do anything. I didn't need one at all. This one has main, public static void main. And inside main, I create the circle objects. So I named the first one circle 1, and I named the second one circle 2. Such an original name, right? You really want to name them what they are. Here it's just circle 1 and circle 2. What I want to show you though is even though I only have one circle object class, only one design, I can make as many circles as I want. I can create 1,000 circles if I want to. So I'm creating 2 circles here, and then I'm printing out the area, the perimeter, the area, the perimeter. Now I chose not to ask the user what sizes they want for the circle or where they want them to be or anything like that. And instead all I did is I used this set radius method. Remember, inside of circle object we have set x location, set y location, set radius. And so inside circle controller I say, okay, circle number 1, your radius is going to be 10. Circle number 1, your radius is going to be 15. Circle number 2, your radius is 18. Notice, by the way, because I didn't set the x and y locations, they're defaulted to 0. Java will automatically set those to 0. So what did I do here? I started out with circle 1. Before I did anything, I calculated its area and calculated its perimeter. But guess what? By default, its x location, y location, and radius are all zeros. So I'm going to get zeros there. Then I set the radius to 10. I didn't move it, so its x location is still going to be 0. Y location is still going to be 0, but its radius is now 10. I can change it. I'm showing you that I can change it. So now the circle radius is 15. And then I did the same thing for circle 2. I just set it to 18. Notice I don't just say calculate area. I have to say calculate whose area? Circle 1's area. So this dot notation hopefully will start to make sense here now that you've actually seen it in creation. Circle object has a method called calculate area. So when I want to use it, I say the name of the circle dot calculate area. What that means is circle 1 is a circle object. Inside that circle object there is a method called calculate area. You saw it. Hopefully this system.out.println makes more sense now. There's an object called system. Inside that object called system is another object called out. Inside that object called out there is a method called println. It's the same idea. Circle01 is an object, and inside that object is a method called calculate area. So again, I didn't do any user input here. We could have done that. We could have imported a scanner, set up a new scanner, asked the user what they wanted these circle parameters to be. That's fine. But here I'm really focusing on this notion of objects. So notice what's happening here. The way the computation is being done is I have now 2 different files, 2 different classes, and this class, the circle class, has 3 attributes in 2 useful methods: the calculate area, calculate perimeter. The rest are setters and getters, and main is a throwaway. I just kept it there for no reason. Circle controller now, we're getting better, but we're not there yet, creates the circle objects and then manipulates the circle objects. And that's how your software runs. You create these objects and then you create like a top-level object to control them. Now I'm still doing all my work inside main here. We're going to get rid of that too. I'm still doing all my work inside main, inside this circle controller class, and for now that's okay, but I'm going to, as the semester goes on, encourage you not to do that. I'm going to encourage you to keep building small methods and small methods that do specific tasks. Okay, so if we run this thing, I'm just going to do this, javac star.java. That'll compile everything. And then if I do dir star.class, that'll show me everything, and look at everything was created basically right when I did the lecture. And so now I can run Java, I have to spell it right, circle controller. It'll build 2 circles. Now remember, the first time, the reason that area is 0 and perimeter is 0 is because I built a circle, but then I didn't give it any values for its radius. And so Java by default sets everything to 0. So that's why it's 0. Then I gave it a value, I think, of 10 for its radius, and reprinted out the areas again. I gave it a radius of 15, and then for circle 2 I gave it a radius of 18. So when I said earlier, you know, attributes are there to keep track of the state of the object, and then methods are there to modify the attribute values, to modify the state. That's what I'm talking about. When we built circle 1, its state was that its radius was 0, and its x location and y location were also 0. That's its state at that point in time. As soon as we said, hey, set radius to 10, its state changed. It's still at 0, 0 in terms of x and y locations, but its radius is now 10. And then I can change it again. I can give it a new state. Now its radius is 15. So this is how objects get used inside of the object-oriented paradigm. You build these classes, then you build objects from those classes, and then you start to use other things that I tend to call controllers that control those objects and change their state. So imagine the classic, you know, run away from zombies game. You would create a player class, and the human player who's playing the game controls that. But then you would also create the zombie class, and then maybe have a controller that builds like 50 or 60 zombie objects, and then just keeps changing these objects' state by having them chase after the human. You can do that in any situation. Now, right now we're thinking of objects in a very concrete way. Towards the end of the semester, I'm going to start to get you to think about objects in a more of a task-oriented way than a physical object way, but we're not there yet. Okay, hopefully you have questions. Bring them to the lecture, bring them to the discussion board, and by all means take these files and play with them and modify them and try to recompile them. Start one from scratch. That's how you get good at this stuff, is playing, and playing with stupid simple things. So try to create a square class where you can have user input, and a square controller that builds square objects, and then ask the user you know, where do they want these squares and how big they could be, that kind of stuff. Try to build that stuff just to get used to handling this stuff. And I will see you in lecture.